What if I told you that in the summer of 1518, an entire city became cursed not by war, not by disease, but by dance? Hundreds of people in Strasbourg, France, were seen twisting, spinning, and convulsing in the streets. They didn't stop when their feet bled. They didn't stop when their bodies collapsed. They didn't even stop when some dropped dead. It was called the dancing plague, and to this day, no one can explain it. It began with a single woman. Her name was Frau Troffea. One hot July morning in 1518, she walked into the narrow cobblestone streets of Strasbourg and began to dance. At first, neighbors thought she was mocking them, or perhaps celebrating. But the look on her face told another story. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't joyful. Her movements were jerky, desperate, as if she was fighting her own body. Hours passed, and still she danced. Day turned into night, and when she finally collapsed from exhaustion, she rose again and kept moving. By the end of the week, over 30 people had joined her. Within a month, over 400. This was no festival. This was a plague. Strasbourg was no stranger to suffering. The early 1500s were a brutal time. Famine, disease, and the looming threat of plague weighed heavily on the population. People lived in constant fear, but nothing prepared them for what they saw that summer. Imagine the streets, hundreds of bodies swaying, jerking, and spinning, their clothes drenched in sweat, their feet raw and bleeding against the stone. Eyewitnesses described people screaming in agony as they moved, begging for help, but unable to stop. Some collapsed, unconscious, only to rise and continue. Others convulsed until their hearts failed. Death by exhaustion, stroke, or sheer physical breakdown. The scene was so overwhelming that city leaders grew desperate. Their solution? They believed the only way to cure the dancers was to let them dance it out. Stages were built, halls were cleared, and musicians were even hired to keep the tempo going. Instead of stopping the plague, the music only fed the madness. The streets echoed with drums, flutes, and cries of pain, a symphony of hysteria. The dance had become a death sentence. The survivors of Strasbourg's nightmare left behind a question that still haunts historians. What caused the dancing plague? Theories abound, and each one is more unsettling than the last. Religious curse. Many believe this was the wrath of Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers. To them, Strasbourg was being punished for its sins. The afflicted were marched to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus in the hope of divine mercy. Some were placed under relics and blessed, but the dancing continued. Possession. Others claimed the dancers were under demonic control. Their convulsions and vacant expressions were seen as proof that dark spirits had taken hold of the city. Mass hysteria. Modern scholars often point to stress and trauma. Strasbourg had been battered by famine, disease, and crushing poverty. Could the overwhelming psychological strain have exploded into a shared physical breakdown? Cases of mass psychogenic illness, where groups exhibit the same symptoms with no physical cause, are documented even today. Ergot poisoning. Another popular theory involves a toxic fungus called ergot, which grows on damp rye bread. This fungus can trigger hallucinations, spasms, and convulsions. Some suggest that an entire city unknowingly consumed it, leading to uncontrollable movements. But critics argue that ergot usually causes people to collapse in pain, not dance endlessly. Each explanation seems possible, yet none fully answers why hundreds of people moved with such eerie coordination, as if possessed by the same invisible force. The truth may forever remain a mystery. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it ended. After weeks of chaos, the dancers finally slowed. One by one, they collapsed into silence. Some survived, left with broken bodies and haunted memories. Others never rose again, their hearts and lungs giving out under the relentless strain. The streets of Strasbourg, once alive with drums, screams, and the endless sound of feet, fell quiet. The city buried its dead, and the world moved on. But whispers of the dancing plague would echo through history. Was it madness, a curse, or something science cannot explain? The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's most chilling mysteries, a mass death that defies reason. Historians call it mass hysteria. Scientists blame poisoned bread. The devout point to curses. But no matter which theory you believe, nothing can fully explain why hundreds of people dance themselves to death. So I'll leave you with this thought. If trauma, fear, or something darker could seize an entire city once before, what's stopping it from happening again? Outro music fades in. This was the story of the dancing plague, because sometimes the deadliest mysteries are the ones we can't explain.